What was the lowest point in my life? I think the lowest point in my life was probably when I had to join the military, and I did that voluntarily. Not that I'm saying that joining the military was bad. So I hit the lowest point in my life because the girl I liked when I was in high school, told me that, and we were, I guess, dating for as dating as high school kids go. And she's saying that, she was hanging out with somebody else. She essentially alluded to sleeping with somebody else. And then one of my best friends died, Hanson King. One of the big reasons why the podcast has even started is because I believe that life is too short to have words unsaid and to have conversations not had. And in the same year, my grandma passed away. So I think the lowest point in my life was when I joined the military, because I was trying to find that purpose and sense of self, especially because I had lost so much. So the follow-up question is, am I grateful it happened? Did it shape me to be a better person? Yeah. So my good friend Brendan and I, we talk constantly about how we're like diamonds because we are forged from these pressures. And without diamonds, there's no stories. And without stories, you could not really be remembered in the way that you would want to be. So, am I grateful it happened? Yes, because those three harsh things were extreme catalysts. I mean, I would even say that I think maybe not as severe, but still severe, was there was a period where my little brother and my parents were sleeping in a basement. And although I'm extremely grateful that it was my aunt and uncle's basement, it was still a basement nonetheless. And just to kind of see them huddled up in this tiny confined space, hugging each other because it was cold, I swore to myself I would never let that happen to them again. I wouldn't care if it was family that did it. I wouldn't care if it was strangers. I told myself, and I vowed to myself, that I would deliver my family from a quote-unquote poverty, and I would buy them a house, and I did. So I would say that, all these bad things in life that had happened were extreme catalysts of change. They were my Auxano, so to speak, and it made me better. It made everybody better. Next question. How was the Navy? And then how did I get into Muay Thai? So the Navy was everything that I needed it to be. And the Navy and the military in general, the military is what you make it. And that's a commonly thrown around phrase to where, they talk about, your military experience is going to be your own. That is a universal truth for every single person, because my experience, I felt, was much better than a person who might have had to go to Afghanistan or might have had to go to Iraq or let's go even further back. I don't know how the men fought in World War II. How they came back home shell-shocked with PTSD, so to speak. How did they continue to live that way? So for me, the military was everything that I needed it to be. It was the military, and the Navy specifically for me, was the breeding ground to become the man who I am today. If I did not have the Navy and I did not water my grass continually, I don't know where I would have been, honestly. Without the military, I wouldn't have had the 3 properties that I do now. Without the military, I essentially was told that I have a full ride to grad school, so that's something that's been extremely crazy because I'm technically a disabled vet. And so with being a disabled vet, and all you need is a 10% to even be eligible for vocational rehab, I was told that if I play my cards right, I can get vocational rehab to pay for my bachelor's, and then I can get my GI Bill to pay for my master's. And if I play my cards even better, I was told that I could use the system and get my doctorates, all paid for by military service / yellow ribbon program for free. So my experience in the Navy, it sucked, but it was actually everything that I wanted and everything that I needed in my life at the time, I personally think. How did I get into Muay Thai? I have to shout out my first coach, Junie Sunga. I got into Muay Thai because I was getting bullied a bit in middle school. And I was very, for lack of better words, not like disobedient, but I was always anxious. Like I was always anxious to go to school. I was always anxious to look apart and feel like I'm meeting the honor obligations of my family, of the society that I was a part of friends, of strangers too. You know, like when you're in middle school, I feel like you're trapped by this weird dogma, especially if you're Asian. Being an Asian kid, super interesting growing up. So, and then not only that, but there's like an entire culture of being Filipino American, like not being Filipino enough for the Filipinos, but then not being like American enough for certain Americans. Like even though I grew up in California, I didn't really feel like the sting of like what racism would be, but there were certain aspects of like, I don't belong anywhere. Why don't I belong anywhere? And Coach Junie Sunga really took me in and was like, there's a place for you here because everybody that does martial arts is the same. When you first start, you all equally suck. Like it's hard to throw a low kick and it's hard to throw a jab cross properly without proper instruction. So it then became important to realize that you will always be a white belt or a beginner somewhere. You are never going to start off as the master. And so for me, Muay Thai taught me the deepest lesson on earth is that repetition is the master of all things. Not necessarily talent, not necessarily hard work. I mean, hard work is part of it, but repetition is the best master you could ever have. Next question reads, what is up with all these thirst questions? Guys, this question reads, how did you get so goddamn sexy? Thank you for the compliment. I don't think I am. Maybe it's the muscles, I guess. I don't even think I'm that big. Like I work hard and I hope that it shows, but I mean, like, I guess I'm okay, you know, like I could do a lot more work. Actually, speaking on that, so I did a body scan, and on the body scan, when I first did it, they were like, oh yeah, you're at 26% body fat. But, you know, like I could still bench like 225. I could squat almost 400 pounds. I could deadlift 400 pounds. So I was strong, but I was just strong and fat. I did a body scan 2 weeks ago, and they were like, yeah, you burned 11 pounds of body fat, you dropped 13 pounds, and you gained 2 pounds of muscle. So, I mean, I guess it's starting to show a little more. Thanks for the compliment. I guess I just don't know. I don't think I'm at a place to receive it comfortably yet. Next question reads, will I ever go back to the military? You know, I would consider it if I was an officer. And now that I have access to grad school and essentially access to my bachelor's, actually. Yeah, you know, I would consider going back to the military as an officer. The follow-up question is, would I go back to military regulated haircuts? I don't know, actually, that I would. Military regulated haircuts? I mean, so I do like the way that my hair is now. It's a little longer, and in older episodes of the podcast, it was like fairly long. But when I gave my company staff like a holiday break, it was like November and December that I wasn't actively posting, and it got really long. Like maybe it covered my ears, so my hair covered my ears, so that's the longest it's been in a while. I don't know if I would go back to military haircuts, especially since I'm not in the military right now. What is my why? So I've said it previously in the past. I think my why is similar to the word sonder. So, sonder is a word coined by John Connick, author of the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And it means that everybody you see is living a visceral experience as you are. And so, with sonder, everybody is the main character of their own story. But for me, it's enough to be like a lamppost of light on the dark path, or like a rest stop that you sit on waiting for the bus. Like if it meant that my presence alone was enough to give you comfort or solace, conversation of death, maybe I gave you food, that was enough. And to be fair, the kindness being reciprocated, heartbreak, etc. All of these things have led me to become the man that I am today. And I personally wouldn't have it any other way. I think my why also means to submit to what is, surrender to what is. And to me, that means surrendering to God's will. I'm personally Christian, and I gave my life to Jesus Christ when I was 17 or 18. Actually, yeah, like I fully accepted Christ when Hanson passed away, because Hanson King was like a devout Presbyterian, and I was always impressed with like how he lived versus like who he was and who he influenced. Like, it's like really unfortunate because when we were at his funeral, there were no places to sit. I had got to his funeral like maybe 30 minutes late, and people were standing outside of the funeral home. And that just shows, I think, how great his heart was. A heart of service and a heart of servitude. So I think my why is to surrender to the path that God has put me on, to be as kind as humanly possible, and just continue having these types of conversations with people. I think the natural trajectory of my life, moving forward, I kind of want to major in psychology and consider becoming a mental health therapist. So at first, I thought it was acquisitions of real estate. I just wanted to buy more and more real estate. I wanted to major in finance. I never wanted debt. But now that I have a full ride to grad school, I can consider what makes me happy versus what will make me rich. And maybe that's because I'm getting older, but one of the crazy things that I've seen was I didn't know that most people buy their house at like age 34, maybe even later. The fact that I was able to buy 3 means I'm far, far ahead of the game. I mean, my 401k and Roth TSP could probably use some work, but I can't compare myself too harshly to the uber successful, especially when me and my family came from the gutter. And the fact that I'm able to produce this much wealth now at 26, turning 27, I have a lot of friends that, you know, will probably never get to the asset class that I'm in now. And that's an unfortunate thing to actually understand, even especially if they got a bigger head start than I did. And I mean, kind of going back to it, with repetition being the best master of everything, some people just rely too much on talent and not enough on their hard work and diligence. So, next question is, what is my favorite thing about having a media company? Being able to capture stories, being able to capture people's expressions, like when they fight, being able to capture people's food that they cook. What I love about having a media company in general is the fact that, like with podcasting being like my one true love and having like those deep conversations of depth, it just means that I have the ability to capture beauty and art in all things. So whether it be conversation, a martial arts commercial, a gym commercial, we did boba, I've done like actor work. There's just so many different things that I love about having the media company. Although the question doesn't ask it, what is my least favorite thing about having a media company? In real estate, it's easier for me to acquisition the real estate, do a market analysis, and then rent out the property. That's a one-man show. I could do it all on my own. Granted, I do have a property manager, so maybe I'm not a one-man show. But with a media company, and when I hired Justin, my creative director, and I hired 2 other people to be my project manager and my editor, it's harder when you realize that you have a responsibility then to pay these people. And, unfortunately, if their work isn't up to par, you have to fire them. Sometimes they have other things going on, like they're a mom or dad, and then their kids obviously take precedence over the work because they're a mom and dad. And like I've been in a season of singleness for a while because I was consistently building, and like knowing that you have to humble yourself when like there's more important things than money and the chase of it. And I wholeheartedly believe that, in the sense that, I mean, no amount of money has ever bought a single second of time, especially if it's time spent. So, I mean, yes, you can outsource. Yes, you can create systems, and you can validate things that you have. But at the end of the day, no amount of money has ever truly bought a single second of time, in the sense that if we live 4,000 weeks, like that poster talks about, with it being extremely morbid, extremely effective, I can't trade $5 for a penny. Holy crap. That was awkward. I can't trade $5 for 5 minutes. I can't trade a penny for 1 second. And it's the fact that you only have a limited amount of time to live based off what you have. That's the biggest thing. So, what contributions do my team bring to the company? Everything. So, I love podcasting. I am better on the business side of things. I would rather just podcast. But Justin was editing, filming commercials, not taking pictures. That was definitely more me too. But what I love about my military experience is it teaches you skills of delegation. So you cannot do everything on your own. You cannot take a hill on your own. You cannot see 5 or 10 patients at the same time on your own. It's best to make well thought out decisions that better the company vision, that better the company efficiency, versus you trying to just strong arm everything and do everything on your own. The power of delegation and the power of the pack means that everybody benefits. For the person that tries to edit, film, script, sell, that's 4 things that demand intense attention. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not as strenuous as trying to be a surgical assistant or to be like covering fire downrange for somebody that might be injured, etc. I mean, there are different types of hard, and I think that the contributions of the team make the founder of the company. The contributions of the team make the CEO. The contributions of the team make the money. If it's just one person making every single decision, I think that's a good path to ruin. What was the most rewarding part about having my company and going through the creative process? So, one of my staff members asked, what would come next? What would come next if the company became quote unquote successful? They asked me, would I buy another house? Would I buy a dream car? Like, would I buy a Ferrari? And I told them that my dream scenario is to be able to pay at least one of my company staff members a livable wage with full benefits. I don't mean a livable wage like in Virginia standards. I think a livable wage would be something along the lines of 60 to 70K, when the median salary here in Virginia Beach is like probably 45 or 50. The fact that 60 or 70K could take somebody so far, if they're single, right? Like the dream scenario would be to pay everybody like 80K to 6 figures, if that was possible. That's not always possible. Maybe I just need to step up my game, though. I could be slacking in that regard. This one goes back to martial arts. Do I plan on doing any bouts or amateur competitions? I competed back in the day when I was in high school. I got punched so hard I found the meaning of life. I've gotten a concussion before from a head kick, like during sparring. But my favorite competitions actually were in judo. So it wasn't as intense as getting like punched or kicked in the face, because you were just using all of your effort to take somebody down, using their momentum against them and then submitting them. The most fun I've ever had in martial arts, honestly, is when I'm able to flip somebody overhead, or when somebody flips me overhead. Like, it's like, dang, like, this is super dope. I feel like I'm in an action movie. But like getting shoulder thrown, hip tossed, it's a crazy feeling. And when you're able to do that on somebody, you feel like a badass. It's pretty dope. I would consider competition if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now. Like, now the fact that I can go to grad school, then I have a media company, and then a real estate investing company, it eats up a lot of time. And one of the harshest things I think that you have to realize is what you're willing to yield to, and what you're willing to, the hardest things that we have as humans that are really busy and have multiple wants is you have to give up. Like, you have to relinquish or sacrifice or yield something that you might not want to, in the hopes of being excellent at something that you really love. I think a great example of this is I have a friend named Josh Otero, Mr. Worldwide, literally state champion, national champion, international champion now. I was training with him on and off at Shift Combat Sports for the better part of, it's been 6 years now. Imagine if I had trained just as hard and as diligent, maybe I'd become the state champion. And I do think that his mentality is of a different breed, but I have to realize that I have become successful in my own ways, and in the ways that I think cultivate my core gifts. I was never truly the best at martial arts. I feel like I'm pretty decent. I'm pretty proficient, but I never really, I was always the nail, right? I was never really the hammer. And the fact that I was winning competition after competition, I think like I had a string of competitions to where I won 10 times, but after I lost 3 times, I gave up. My heart was broken. I didn't nurture it, and I just stopped fighting. I kept training because it was great exercise, but I stopped competing. So there are many monsters out there like Josh, Darren, Coach Adam. There are beasts out there, and they are one-track minded in what they love to do. And that's the same type of focus I feel like I have to have with my media company, with my real estate, and with school. So I would love to be able to compete again. It just depends. Okay, this question I know comes from one of my best friends. This question is definitely Jose. Jose, I love you, especially if you're watching/listening. Who is your favorite brown boy? So we have this long-standing joke when we were in the military, that like they would always make the brown boys like clean like we were the janitors. Like, because we were brown, we always had to like clean the bathrooms or like do the dirtiest jobs that nobody wanted to do because we were brown. And so I just remember talking to Jose, and I was like, man, you a brown boy. And we just started dying of laughter. It wasn't anything. It's like one of the weird ways to cope in the military is to have just weird jokes like that, where you're just like, oh, they didn't pick you because you're brown. Or like, oh yeah, you have to clean the toilets because you're brown. Yeah, it was just kind of like stupid military coping humor. Jose, I love you, bro. You are my favorite brown boy. Maybe. So this goes back to real estate. How was real estate investing, and how was property management? I feel like that's like actually a self podcast I could talk about on my own. But I'll talk about it. So real estate investing was only possible because of the military. I had the VA loan, and the VA loan let me buy properties at 0% down, meaning that I didn't have to put a down payment, and more often than not, the sellers would pay closing costs. Not everybody gets that same privilege or honor. I got that honor because I joined the armed forces. The VA loan is a powerful tool when it comes to real estate investing, because with the 0% down, you keep your liquidity in your pocket. Thus, you can invest it back into the S&P 500. You can invest it back into the stock market. or you could potentially use that money to put back into the mortgage or into renovations for the home, which is something that I did. When I was working I was working full time at a poke bowl shop while I was also active duty, and I was working sometimes 70 to 80 hour weeks because I really wanted to pay off my 2008 Honda Civic, and I wanted to have, well, when I first got to combat medic school training, I spent a lot, like probably more than I should, but I never had like that true college experience. So we were going out every night, and we were going out almost every weekend, whether it be drinks. It was mostly food. I'm still not a heavy drinker. I personally think that most things don't taste good, but I will openly admit that when I was in the military, I had a drinking problem with like hard liquor. Like, people make fun of me and say that I'm old because I enjoy bourbon. Why don't you guys enjoy bourbon? I mean, bourbon's amazing. But yeah, needless to say, when investing in real estate, you have to make sure that your finances are in order. And it's not like just paying rent, because when you pay rent, like you pay that fixed price of like, let's say $1,600. That includes everything like maintenance, repairs, etc. Obviously you still have to pay the bills, but if you have your own home, you have to accommodate for the cost of, my washer broke. Oh, the water heater went out. Oh, my HVAC is broken. You have to set aside costs for those things. And honestly, if you can't afford to pay for repairs, like if your roof is leaking, it's probably best not to buy a house at that point. But for me, I was willing to sacrifice everything to get that first house, and I did. I saved up almost $30,000 for renovation costs. I spent only around $15,000. And because we were pre-COVID, that other $15,000 was used for my condo that I bought the year after. So real estate investing has been a wild trip. Property management. Guys, if you're trying to run a business, you need a property manager. Why would you invest in real estate? Okay, and this again, subjective opinion. Why would you invest in real estate if you're, like, the goal is to make money while you sleep? And real estate isn't truly passive until you develop the systems to make it passive. But I think a lot of people neglect that real estate is a lot harder when you try, again, when you're trying not to delegate. For me, having a property manager means if the AC shits on itself, I won't have to get a call at 2 a.m. If the water heater blows up, it's not me dealing with it. It's going to be the property manager. And the property manager realistically only takes 10 to 12% of the monthly rent as a cut. So if your rent is $1,700 and they only take 10%, you're giving them $170 for the month to cover your headache. And they report to you if a tenant destroys something or if a tenant needs something fixed. At the very minimum, you get peace of mind that nobody will really bother you in times where you're just trying to relax. They'll bother the property manager. I've gotten conflicting remarks to where, mentors have told me it makes more sense if you just if you manage your own properties because you only have 2 or 3 active rentals. I get that, but it's more so peace of mind. For just transparency's sake on the real estate side, once my first rental property will be rented out again, I'll be having passive income of probably $1,400 a month. That's a part-time job that somebody would work at McDonald's, at a boba shop. It's money that I'm making while I sleep. So my biggest advice and biggest takeaway when it comes to real estate investing is get your money right, get your habits right, be willing to take the risk. So I feel like I answered every single question, and I don't want to blabber too long, but this was the second self episode, but this will be the first Q&A. Thank you guys so much for wanting to, I guess, listen to me speak. But at the end of the day, guys, the grass is not greener on the other side. It's greener where you water. Do take care not to shrink yourself for spaces you've outgrown. And guys, as always, be well and walk tall. Thank you guys for listening to Auxano, our causes of growth. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.